Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to Bullony Basketball. As you can see, I'm here with my guy, the one, the only, Rik Knows Hoops. How's it going, my man?
Good, man. Happy to be back on the channel, ready to talk about crazy second round that we just had for sure.
Yes, sir. It was crazy indeed. Um, I know that it was a little bit disappointing in one respect for you. It was disappointing in another respect for me. But nonetheless, we're here to cover it. We're here to talk about our thoughts, and that's exactly what we're going to do today. To spare both of us the agony of starting off the show on a bad note, why don't we start with the Western Conference? And we'll start off over there. I think one series that we saw happen, and I think most people were thinking the other way it was going to happen. The result of it was the Timberwolves and the Warriors. And so Minnesota comes in there, they lose the first game. Steph Curry gets hurt, the Warriors still win, and people are like, well, Warriors, maybe they could hang on until Curry comes back. But the Timberwolves just gentlemen swept them after that. What do you make of this series? Timberwolves moving forward, and then just the Warriors with the season they had.
It's actually crazy because going into the series, I was really liking Minnesota's chances, even with Curry on the court. Was definitely worried though after seeing like how well they were playing offensively. Golden State was up until Curry's injury, and after that happened, you just can't really expect much from the Warriors. I was just really surprised that any of those games after that were kind of somewhat competitive. But really, it's just a big shout out to the Timberwolves for going in there and handling business despite Curry missing time. I feel like they've just been playing really well. They're playing their brand of basketball. It's kind of been ugly games for them, but they're suited for that because they've just been such a good defensive team over the last few years. Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle have been a pleasant surprise, I think, as a duo. More so, Julius Randle. I'm happy to see him having like his basically playoff breakout because didn't play in the postseason last year, and in his previous couple of trips with the Knicks, he never really had like a good series, and he's had two pretty good series so far. So I think he should have a lot of confidence going into this next matchup in the conference finals. Definitely the shooting, I think, is still a little bit of a concern for Minnesota. They've been very streaky from the 3-point line, but I've been very just well surprised with just how well that their top two players have been playing. And as for Golden State, I mean, it's kind of tough to get out of that or even make that series competitive without Steph Curry. And it was just kind of a freak injury. Like Steph Curry said, he's never had a hamstring injury before. And he's played all these years in the NBA. He's 37 years old. And this is literally the first time this happened. And it didn't even seem like it was like a crazy play that the injury happened. I was already kind of iffy on their role players like Podziemski. Jonathan Kuminga was in and out the rotation, like in that first series against the Rockets. Like Moses Moody did not have a good playoff run. I was already iffy on those guys with Steph Curry in the lineup, but not having Steph Curry, you're just asking a lot of like Jimmy Butler has to be the Jimmy Butler of like a couple years ago every single night for those games to be competitive. And that just wasn't the case for them. Minnesota's too good for that. And I mean, I never thought I would see a time where Minnesota's going to back-to-back conference finals, but here we are, 2 years in a row. They have a chance to make it to the NBA finals.
Yeah, I think that was well said there at the end, especially because Minnesota back-to-back conference finals a couple of years ago, you would have never thought this would happen. Um, just with this series, I know a lot of people, a lot of Warriors fans, especially, they're like, well, if Curry was there, we would have definitely won. The one thing I will say to that is I think now they probably get an idea for a lot of their playoff series that they've won over the years, where players were injured and stuff like that. Nevertheless, though, like, would they have probably at least had a better showing? Definitely. Like, it would have either win 6 or 7 games. Maybe they do win the series. I don't know, but ultimately that didn't happen. I was just a little surprised with the way the Warriors played after that game. Like, you even said, like, the rest of those games in that series, like, almost didn't even feel like a playoff atmosphere except for maybe, like, game 3. Like, it just was a steamroll. I kind of felt like, and the Timberwolves didn't really shoot that great from 3 in some of those games. I think there was one point, like, there was a 2-game stretch where they shot 14 of like 72 from 3. Like, that's awful. And then they said at one point, like, that's like the worst back or 2-game stretch of shooting from 3 in playoff history. And Ant's like, sheesh, like, his eyes got big and everything. He's like, that's crazy. So I don't know. I think that the Warriors just didn't really show it. I don't think they were a championship team like Draymond said. I know that they made a good run, like, at that point. maybe exceeded expectations from what people thought when he said that. So I guess there's that to, I guess, hold their hat on. But ultimately, this Warriors team has won so many championships in the last few years that it feels like a disappointment whenever they don't, or whenever they're not like even right there. With Jimmy Butler and that acquisition, I know, like, I've been critical of Jimmy Butler. I've said multiple times when you need him most, he goes ghost. That's basically like the thing I've said most about him. And ultimately, I do think he did it again, because if they would have got one game, they probably only needed one game just to make sure that Curry could come back. Because it's not like, people forget, like, it's not like Curry had an injury that was going to sideline him the rest of the playoffs. Like, he probably would have been back the end of the series, game 6 or 7. And then, of course, like, maybe game 6, he's still not going to be 100%. But if you have Steph Curry on the floor and he's able to run around and create action like that, and, people always talk about his gravity and everything, that could change the series in its own. It opens up so much for everybody else. And he just couldn't get you one game. There were games, too, where he just didn't even look like the star player. Like, he didn't take it seriously. I think the one game he took 9 shots. Like, that's not enough for a guy who's, at that point, when Curry goes down, he's supposed to be the best player. But no, I think the Timberwolves earned it. Like you said, Randall, he's been playing insane. Rudy Gobert, he's same thing, like, kind of with him. Like, I feel like both of them are on, like, some redemption arc run right now. And then I just think that they have, like, a really deep team that I know, like, we're mostly touching on the recaps, but when they go against OKC, I think there's going to be a lot more bodies than probably what, OKC has seen so far in this playoff run.
Exactly. It's a team that's been there. I mean, even though last season ended kind of abruptly, it was 5 games. They had a chance to win both of those games at home against the Mavs, and they failed to close those games out. Those are still games that you can really learn from. I think, like, not to skip ahead, but I think OKC's kind of learned a little bit from, like, their playoff woes last year as well. So if they can kind of regress more or progress more to their mean of shooting, which we know they're a better shooting team than what they've shown, it could be very interesting in the conference finals. And last point I'll really make about the Warriors is, like how you kind of mentioned, like, Jimmy Butler kind of disappeared a little bit. Even though he got injured in, I think, game 2 against the Rockets, he wasn't really there in that series when he came back. I think that's part of why the Rockets were able to push it to 7, because Jimmy Butler really wasn't on his A game. Steph Curry had some down moments. And even in that game 7, like, there's not really a lot of Jimmy moments. There was, like, a big Steph run. There was the Buddy Hield game. But, like, Jimmy just wasn't really there, like, offensively, like you were hoping he would have been. And I think a lot of it can be alluded to, and even, like, Steph Curry's injury, like, these are older players. Like, it's just the reality of it. These guys are older. So Jimmy Butler falling on his tailbone might have not affected him as much 5 years ago. He probably would have played the next game, but he's a little older now. So that might have just been lingering for him just for his age. And Steph Curry, a little hamstring tweak, I mean, may have not even have happened like when he was 5 years younger or something like that, or even a few years ago. But it's just the reality. Like, once you get a team that's older and those star players have to do that night in, night out in the playoffs, it's tough to just maintain that attrition. And I think it's kind of catching up with the Warriors. They have an interesting offseason. We know they're not just going to go on like a full reset, but they're going to definitely have to make some moves. I think they got to get younger and get just more talented young players, because we've seen how they've kind of been iffy with their development in guys like Moses Moody, Jonathan Kuminga, even guys that they drafted before like James Wiseman. They have a lot of first-round picks that either have not planned out or they're just not even on the team anymore. And even like Brandon Przemski has been very up and down for, the best I could say about him. So they're going to have an interesting offseason. They definitely need to get younger, I think, because Steph Curry's still great. Jimmy Butler's still great. Draymond's still very impactful. But you can't have a bunch of 35-plus-year-old guys at the top of your core and I think still have the expectation that you want to win a championship.
Yeah, and then even those young guys they have, like Podziemski, like you said, Kuminga, Moody, like it seems like a lot of Warriors fans are torn about them. Some either really like them, some either don't, couldn't care less really about them. I think Podziemski like probably has seen that the most about like the hate side of it, just because of the way he played in the second round. But, and that's going to make it even harder, I think, to get younger, because it's like, do you ship out these guys who the fan base is not behind? And then at that point, it's like, you're shipping out everyone except maybe Curry, Draymond, Jimmy. Do you try to build for now? And then it's like, but they should be getting younger. Realistically, that's what they should be doing. So I definitely agree with you there. Only other thing I will say, and then we can move on, but Rudy Gobert, finally, he got his lick back on Draymond. So good for him. Finally, he is, after years later, after Draymond laughed at him for crying, not making the All-Star game, I think he's been waiting for some moment like that, and he finally got it. So,
and choking him out too last year. Can't forget about that. Like you said, Rudy's on a low-key redemption arc too. He's been playing a lot better than worse in these playoffs, I would say. He's definitely had some iffy games like in the first round, but I think that game 5 against the Lakers gave him a ton of confidence, and he's been playing really good basketball.
And the other thing, I forgot one other thing, but they always say don't count your chickens before they hatch. And I know everyone for years was saying how, Jimmy Butler was in the right, the Timberwolves were in the wrong. I think him getting eliminated in Minnesota is kind of like, it's a great callback to that bad ending experience years back. So
great callback.
It's just interesting. So they finally got some redemption there too. But if you want, we can move on here to the Thunder and the Nuggets. Speaking of redemption, the Thunder lost Game 6 of the Nuggets. I think everyone thought, the Nuggets had this Game 7 experience. They're just going to steamroll the Thunder. Maybe not steamroll, because we know the Nuggets, they mess around and stuff. But they were probably going to ultimately get the job done. I think a lot of people thought that, even though it was in OKC, and it did not matter because the Thunder just blew them out. I know Aaron Gordon was kind of injured and stuff in that game, but I honestly think he played pretty good given the circumstances. It just felt like the Nuggets just didn't have enough, and it seemed like a lot of guys just didn't play that well. So what do you make of this series between probably the top 2 people in MVP this year, and then now the Nuggets going into another offseason and coming up short, second round, losing in 7?
Yeah, I mean, Aaron Gordon was potentially, if not the best player on the court for Denver, he was the hardest working player on the court. I mean, guy had one hamstring and he was still on the boards like crazy, still trying to defend even though he could barely move. Very disappointing showing for the Nuggets in Game 7. I already thought, though, it would be kind of a tough uphill battle. I was surprised they even made it that far in this series, personally, just because the depth around Denver, it's lacking very severely. This is probably the worst it's been since probably the seasons where Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. were out. These are really rough times in Denver as far as just their role players go. It was such a intriguing series though, a weird chess match between these two coaches. Denver running the most zone that anybody's ran in the NBA almost ever. They were in zone 80% of some of those games, which I didn't always agree with, but I mean, they were able to force it to a Game 7. And there was such a big flip after Game 3 where Denver won 2 of the 3 clutch time games. Game 1, they kind of stole. Game 3 kind of stole a little bit, but I think they just out-executed OKC down the stretch. And then it was just a complete switch. Games 4 and 5, OKC was the team that was executing down the stretch. And Denver was a team that looked like they hadn't been in those situations before. They haven't won in those situations. And such an interesting switch because you don't really see that happen between 2 teams that are kind of on the opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to experience. And especially when the first half of the series kind of showed one team dominating down the stretch when it comes to those clutch minutes. And it just completely flipped. I got to give a lot of credit to Shea. I feel like he struggled a little bit in the first 7 games of their playoff run. Those last 4 games of this series, he was spectacular, especially down the stretch. It was a lot less of him trying to go isolation and just more playing in the flow of the offense. He was big time. I mean, he was the best player on the court a lot in those last 4 games, I would say. And even other guys kind of stepped up. Lou Dort had a big game in Game 5 where he just all of a sudden hit 3 threes to start the fourth quarter. It's just a lot of little things. And it was kind of surprising to see a team out-execute Denver down the stretch because they are typically the most sound team when it comes to late game basketball because they know exactly what the hell they're running. They're getting into that 2-man action with Murray and Jokic, and they're going to get their shots. They're going to get their looks. But that OKC defense is real. It is ridiculous. They make it difficult every single possession. And we saw in Game 7, however you want to say if Alex Caruso was fouling the hell out of Jokic or not, they make it tough just to get the ball, entry passes. They make everything difficult defensively. And that's where they're going to be a tough team for Minnesota to beat. It's very, 2 similar styles. But the OKC defense is insane. And like I said, I was kind of surprised that it got to 7, but I wasn't really surprised when I saw the game get out of hand because OKC was the better team in this series for, I think, most stretches. There were just a couple of times where Denver was able to out-execute them down the stretch. And even when Denver was able to get leads, I mean, OKC was just getting right back into these games because of how they defend and then Shea really taking over on the offensive side of the ball. And just real quickly, how you said Denver goes into the offseason, they're another team. It's a lot because of the second apron, but it's just tough to get better for them because they don't really have the means to go out and sign anybody. And then even the assets that they do have, like, honestly, if I was a team, I'm not giving you anything of value for Michael Porter Jr. right now because he just has not been really good the last 2 postseasons. And unless you're just sending draft capital, which I'm not really sure what Denver's draft capital even looks like, I would not want to take on his contract. I wouldn't even want him really on my team. But there's not just really avenues for them to get better. Christian Brown took a nice leap this season, but how much better is he going to be? You still have a lot of money invested in Jamal Murray. If he's still your guy that you want next to Jokic, that's fine. But how do you get talent around these guys, especially when drafting has not been as kind to them? Julian Strawther has had moments. We'll see what Daron Holmes is when he gets back because he missed his entire rookie season with the Achilles injury, which is a big blow for him. It's tough for Denver to get better. I'm just going to be brutally honest, and it's kind of tough because Jokic is still in his prime playing elite basketball.
Yeah, I think that addition of Daron Holmes is definitely going to help, though. That kind of sucks. Like, it happened, what was it, the day right after he got drafted, too, or something like that? Like, it was...
I think it was like his first summer league game.
Summer. It was like the first day of, like, something, really him being on the team, I remember. And that really stinks. But I think it will help them, assuming he's healthy next year. This, series in general, I was just really disappointed, I think, in Game 7 with, I obviously, like, I have, some of my favorite players and stuff like that, but I'm not going to sugarcoat it because I do think that, Jamal Murray was bad, and I think Jokic was really bad in Game 7. And I think Jokic was bad in Game 7. It wasn't just because, like, Alex Caruso was, in my opinion, like, yeah, maybe he was playing a little physical, but I feel like Jokic didn't do what he was supposed to do. He also just didn't take over the game. Like, he didn't look like he wanted to take over the game at any point. That's kind of shocking to me, and I know we talk about how he's kind of like he's not a selfish superstar. Like, he's going to, get his teammates involved. That's why he's probably going to retire with the most triple doubles in NBA history by the time he's done. And he just averaged one. So, like, I just feel like, though, sometimes it's to a fault. We were just saying that same thing about Jimmy Butler, how he only took like 9 shots. Like, that's how many he took in the last game of this series. And in other games in this series, I feel like Jokic just really didn't look to be super aggressive. Like, you look at the box score numbers, he might have got like 24 points or something like that, but he really didn't take over the game, especially when you're playing that much. You have the ball that much. Like, I think that's the one thing that gets lost in this. Like, it's not necessarily just how many minutes you play, it's how much you have the ball. So a guy like Jokic, who's maybe playing 42 minutes, and he's probably touching the ball for 39, 40 minutes of those offensive possessions, like, he needs to give you more, and he needs to give you more effective offense. And he almost always does, but he didn't in the biggest game of the season. So that was what was shocking to me. I think it was also shocking because, like you said, Aaron Gordon was probably the MVP of the game. If not, then it was Christian Brown. Like, those are really the main two. Michael Porter Jr. really didn't do anything. I know you mentioned, like, yeah, he had like the shoulder thing he was dealing with. But this is a guy who, even when they drafted him, he was dealing with an injury. So it's not like this is anything new. That's probably the biggest reason he flew down to 14. The thing for me with him, though, is you mentioned, like, the last 2 playoffs, like, he just really hasn't played well. And I agree. But I'll even one-up you because when they won the championship, who was their closing lineup almost all the time? Jokic, Murray, Gordon, KCP, Bruce Brown. Like, Michael Porter Jr. was on the bench a lot of those games. Like, when they won, like, the final seconds of their championship, he was on the bench. So I know he's considered a part of their core four, but if you're asking me, like, I'm looking, obviously Jokic is insane, best player in the world. Aaron Gordon, I think he really proved to everyone in this postseason too why he needs to be a core player. You keep moving forward, and it's like Jamal Murray. You got to think, does he still have it in the tank? He's shown you a lot more than Michael Porter Jr. has, but they can't fall in love with keeping this guy. I think that if there's a move on the table, they definitely have to look at it, and potentially, if it's a good enough move, you got to take it. I think it's just gotten to that point with him. I think the other thing that's a little frustrating with this game is I don't know about you, but just from watching the game, like the first 8-10 minutes, I thought the Nuggets had the game. Like, I thought that they had the Thunder right where they wanted. I'm like, okay, they're up 12. You know, their experience is showing, and the Thunder's inexperience is showing. And then David Adelman kind of made a rookie mistake. He took out Jokic and Murray together, and you know, that lineup that was in just completely blew everything away from them. The Thunder got momentum and came back in. What were you gonna say? Sorry.
I literally tweeted that, and I'm like, in a game 7, there's never a moment where your two best players should be on the bench, unless you're up 50 points. There's never a moment that both Murray and Jokic should be sitting on the bench. I don't care if it's 10 seconds left in the first quarter. They should both still be on the court, bro. Like, there's no way that those guys should be sitting on the bench. And that you could really attribute like that run that OKC went on, like you said, to that moment, because that's kind of where the game really fell out of favor for Denver.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and hate on Westbrook today or anything like that, but I think it's just for the fans too that are saying like he deserves a ring, this and that. I think his legacy definitely is insane, but a lot of times he is his own enemy. You know, like, and there's a lot of times in this game too where it felt like he was just giving it away, like turning it over, shooting, you know, a bunch of missed shots. And it's just, I feel like hard to defend at that point. But just in general, the Nuggets, I think that they need a lot of fixing. I totally, like, this might sound a little insane to you, but I wouldn't even totally rule out a Jamal Murray trade if the right package is available. I think that if you're asking me, Jokic is obviously untouchable, Aaron Gordon is untouchable, and Christian Brown is untouchable. I feel like everybody else, like, you know, if the right deal comes about, you gotta move some people, you know, to bolster the depth of the team, like you said.
I wouldn't be opposed to trading Jamal Murray, because even him the last couple of seasons, especially playoffs, he hasn't been the Murray that we saw like when they made it to the finals and won the whole thing. Yeah. So I don't think that's ridiculous. MPJ, like, the big value was like his shooting, but I just feel like even over like the last couple of years, he just hasn't been like as elite of a shooter to cover up the rest of his flaws, where he's not a good defender. He'll hit the boards, but his defense is very lacking. We already have a couple other starters on your team that aren't great defenders. At best, they're okay defenders in Murray and Jokic. So interesting offseason. They're going to have a fresh front office. Who knows if they stick with Adelman or if they go on a fresh coaching search. I feel like I might go on a fresh coaching search, to be honest. But yeah, interesting offseason. But at the same time, OKC won 68 games for a reason. They're a tough team. And the conference finals it's going to be a dogfight, I think, between the Wolves and OKC. Like, this is going to be a very fun series, again, with two very good young guards. I'm really interested to see if, like, for them, I think Jalen Williams has to be better. He had a very good game 7. I think game 3, he led them in scoring. I think he had like 30-plus points. Really, the rest of the series, there was a lot left to be desired. And also, the one thing that concerns me about them, and I think a good defensive team can maybe exploit that, their jump shooting it's not great. It's really not great. They can get hot. They do take a lot of threes, but it has not been great in the postseason. Chet has not been shooting that good. J-Dub has not been shooting good. Lou Dort, I mean, we saw the stat, like, on the road, he hadn't hit a 3 in like a couple months or something like that, but even he has not been shooting good. I'm a little questionable about their jump shooting. They get a lot of wide open threes because they don't respect their shooters. And I'm interested to see how Minnesota will try and attack that, because a good defensive team and a defensive coach like Chris Finch, I think, will try and just dare those guys to really beat them for 4 out of 7 games. And they might load up and throw a lot more bodies at Shea than maybe he's accustomed to seeing. It's going to be an interesting chess match. I think we just got out of a pretty good chess match too. So this conference finals should be pretty fun.
I will say, I mean, I think if, the Thunder definitely going to have to be more prepared for Minnesota's defense. Not that they're like a super juggernaut team defensively. I actually think this year it feels like they probably aren't as good defensively as they were last season even. But they're definitely an improvement from the Nuggets. And you saw like how some of those games, like it kind of gave them some problems. So that's kind of the biggest thing. But both those teams, like you said, can get streaky. I just want to say, like, one more thing is Billy Donovan held back Alex Caruso like he does with a lot of people, and yet people voted him into the Hall of Fame. What a league we're in. So
great college coach, man. It's Josh Giddey played good for your Bulls at the end of the year for sure. He's kind of a second half of the season merchant. He's done that a couple times that I've noticed, but he was playing good. But getting Alex Caruso for Josh Giddey straight up, another really good Sam Presti move. I got to give credit where it's due because he was one of the big differences in that series, man. Like his defense, first the versatility, but he was basically a defensive 5 for them when they would go off of the small ball lineup. And in Game 7, like you said, early in the game, Jokic and company were really dominating that double big lineup. And if Alex Caruso was not as prepared as he was to go in there and guard Nikola Jokic, like you said, maybe Jokic was being a little passive in this game. Maybe it seemed like he was trying to just get calls more than he was trying to just demand the ball in the post to me a little bit. Could have been a much different game. Like Alex Caruso was damn near the MVP of the game, where Jalen Williams scored 17 points in a quarter. Shea had 30 plus. Like Alex Caruso was dang near the MVP for real.
Yep, and another bad move by Arturas Karnisovas. But anyways, we can move on, and we'll talk about the one I know you don't want to talk about, which is the Knicks and Celtics series. This series was pretty rough. I mean, highlighted in the sense of like the biggest thing that probably is coming from it now that we're going to be looking at next year is the Jason Tatum injury, and how that's going to affect the Celtics. But not only that, but Jaylen Brown was, dealing with a meniscus thing, and Kristaps Porzingis, I'm not going to say what people said he had, but, begins with an A. I think you know it. But, this series, I don't think people thought that the Knicks even had a chance. And especially, I think really what gave them hope is winning those first 2 games in Boston. And it felt like the same way at the end of it, too, with the Mikal Bridges, like, defensive play that sealed the deal. And then, yeah, it was just kind of crazy. So take me through what you think of this series and, the Knicks moving forward and your Celtics as you go into the offseason.
I kid you not, like my professional diagnosis going into this series was we should probably sweep them, but they'll probably get a game. Like that's really just how I felt. Yeah. I just felt like Boston clearly the better team, more talented team, more experienced team, and they dominated the regular season matchup between the 2 teams. And those first 2 games really showed, yes, Boston, the better team. They got up 20 both games. The cold shooting may have played a part in it, but it was really just them missing like wide open jump shots, and the Knicks just started to execute. The Knicks they're such a scrappy team. It's a Thibodeau team, so you kind of expect that. And like you said, still in those first couple of games just kind of gave them a lot of confidence. The JT injury was obviously tough, but I mean at the time, 2-1 series, we were down 7 points. Even if JT was healthy, finished the rest of the series, it's probably the same result, to be honest. Like the Knicks wanted it more. They were the scrappier team. They were the hungrier team, and they executed a lot better down the stretch than the Celtics did. And that's just really like how the series went. You got to just give a lot of credit. Even like Jalen Brunson didn't shoot like great for most of the series, but in the big moments, he was there. They were going to him. He was getting any shot that he wanted. OG Anunoby had a really good stretch. I think it was game 1 where he kind of helped bring them back into the game. Mikal Bridges in the fourth quarter was like one of the best players I've ever seen. Like it just seemed like he did not miss shots in the fourth quarter. Yeah. And even though the Knicks, like their depth's not great, their top 6 guys really, play great basketball. Cat had a really good series, which I thought he could have been exploited, but instead of running a lot of drop coverage, they were just allowing him to switch. And with Boston's cold shooting for most of the series, they were getting a lot of defensive stops with him. And I think offensively, like he was on the block a lot more in this series, which he was able to dominate like the smaller lineups when KP was on him, even when Al Horford was on him. He was kind of getting Al Horford in a little bit of foul trouble there. So the Knicks wanted it more. Definitely thoroughly surprised that they controlled the series as well as they did. But sometimes that just happens in the playoffs. Like sometimes the better team ends up losing. JB's been injured for the last couple of months, and you can kind of tell like there were a lot of times where you could tell he's nursing an injury, and there are games like Game 5 where he played really good. He had a couple games in the Orlando series where he played really well. It's just the matter of playing a lot of late basketball over like the last 4 years. Like guys are banged up. The KP thing's weird, but I mean, if he's sick, I guess. Who knows what the illness is? We still don't know. Definitely a tough time for it because I think Brad Stevens said in his like end of season presser, it was kind of disappointing because it seemed like for a guy that only played about half the season, like the last like month, he was really starting to turn the corner a little bit. He had that game in Madison Square Garden where he was incredible. He had 30 plus points. And then you get to the playoffs and this is just like not the same player at all. It was definitely a little frustrating, but sometimes that just happens in the postseason. Disappointing into the season. I'm glad that we were able to get one last year because the JT injury makes things a lot interesting for the next year and beyond that, because who knows if he even comes back next year. I personally don't expect him to. I don't think he should if he's not like 100% by the time it's like February or March next year. But it's going to be a grueling off season. I've already seen so many like trades. Every time I go on Twitter, I see people talking Celtics trades, Derek White, rumors, Drew Holiday. I'm already tired of it, man. It's going to be a long off season. But shout out to the Knicks. They have not been here in a long time, and they kind of deserve it for the way that they've been playing.
Yeah, they haven't been here since they played the Pacers, and that's going to be a rematch too. But just focusing on this series, I guess I'm glad that you said it because that's kind of what I was thinking too. Yes, the injuries happened. Yes, people were playing through injuries for Boston, but to me, it just felt like the Knicks really had this series. And I even said like those first two games were really like the turning point. Now, I didn't totally rule out the Celtics, even down 2-0, especially after the way they came in Game 3 and they kind of just blew the brakes off the Knicks. And I'm like, okay, well, if they can just steal one close game, get this back to 2-2, I think that I like their chances. Even if they lose Game 5, I mean, they can easily win back-to-back games against this team. Winning like 3 straight, winning 4 straight, especially when multiple games are in New York, that's a little bit harder to do. And so I think actually like Game 4 was like kind of the final like part of it really, and it's not just because of the Tatum injury, but also like it just felt like that whole fourth quarter like nobody on their team was missing a shot. It was like one of those moments where like nobody's missing, and it's like okay, well, it seems like they're probably gonna win the game. And then sure enough, it was like you said, a 7-point game, and then that turnover, it was 9 points, and then Tatum went down, and from there, it's like you kind of had a feeling the series was over. Like I know the Celtics got that Game 5, but they just didn't come like they cared, I guess, like in Game 6. So like they kind of just like wrapped it up. But this Celtics team now, it's going to be interesting because I feel like there's a pretty good chance that people are going to be moved. I know you've seen those trade rumors, and you don't want to see those trade rumors, but it's likely that someone's probably going to have to be moved unless they want to like go really far, like over the luxury tax. And I don't know if they're willing to do that. I mean, we'll have to see, but I don't even know if it's really feasible to do that, like for a lot of their players, just because they got so many of them like so recently, like in the last 3 years. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think next season, I agree with you. I don't think Tatum's going to probably play at all. Now, I do think the Celtics will still make the playoffs and stuff. Like they have a well-rounded team. Even if some of these core guys, whether it's Horford or Holiday or Porzingis or whatever, or Derek White, even if like a couple of them are gone, I think that they still have enough pieces that they're going to be a good team. A championship team? No, I don't think so. But I do think that they could probably be like a second round team, maybe a conference finals team if like the cards play right or something. But I think that that's probably about as far as it goes. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. It just seemed like with the Knicks, like they've kind of been playing. They came into this series, I think, a lot more locked in, and you can tell that because even though, like we said, the injuries, like this Celtics team shouldn't have had the same result against them as the Pistons in the first round. Like that just felt like the Knicks had, more of a, I guess, vendetta of like, oh, we're 0-14 against, or what was it, like 0-10 against the Celtics, Cavs, and Thunder, and so they just wanted to, I guess, prove people wrong, and I guess they pretty much did. Like, but yeah, the back half, the last two games of the series were kind of whatever, but really the first two games were the most important in my opinion, and that really gave the Knicks a chance. I think even if they split those games, I think that the Celtics probably still win this series, and
Yeah, it definitely changed like a ton, especially like you said, the way that those games happened, they were pretty much identical.
And they were 1 point games, I think, both of them, right? Like,
I think one possession.
I know the second game was a 1 point game. I don't remember if the first one was. I think first one maybe was a 3 point win or something.
Yeah, because Mikal got the steal. Yeah. So like you said, they were basically identical games. Went down to the last possession. Boston blew a 20-point lead. They shot bad in both of those games. Like, very demoralizing, but like you said, I feel like there was still a good opportunity that Boston could make it a series after that. But the Knicks came out, executed down the stretch again in Game 4, even before the Tatum injury. So it's tough. I got to give Josh Hart a shout out too. I forgot to mention his name. He was really good in this series. Like, he was knocking down his threes, and it seems like anytime that there's a loose ball or there's a rebound up in the air, he's there, and he's gonna make it tough for anybody to grab it other than him. So he was really the X factor, I think, for the Knicks in the series. He was great. Definitely, the conference finals. These are two teams that are like very scrappy. I know we're going to get to the next series, but as for Boston, I mean, offseason outlook, like you said, there's going to be change. We know that's pretty much guaranteed. Who's gone? Who knows? I would hope Derek White would be untouchable to Brad Stevens. I would hope you don't trade Jaylen Brown unless you're getting like a really good return, I would say. Say how you feel about JB. I still think you got him and Tatum together. I think you can build still a very good roster around him to win another championship. Probably Drew and or KP both will be gone this offseason. I kind of have my mind made up that both of those guys might be on new teams this summer, and I think that's just how the NBA is these days. Like, you just can't keep these cores together for that long when you're paying that much money, just because of how all the new CBA stipulations go in and everything. So it's just going to be tough, but you got moves to make. Drew will still be a pretty good commodity on the trade market. I know teams will want him. You got basically 2 first-round picks this year, 28 and 32. Those are basically 2 late first-round picks. Who knows what they do with those, if they trade them, if they keep them, if they try to trade up. Brad Stevens was not very open in his press conference about decisions this summer, so we'll see. I trust Brad Stevens, though. I don't think the man's made a bad move yet since he's been GM, so I'm going to keep trusting in him to get this team to where they were back in the NBA Finals within the next couple of years.
Yeah, and just last thing I'll say, I mean, it is, in hindsight, it's definitely a good thing that you guys won last year, because obviously this year's over for you guys, and then next year it's probably going to be one of those years where it's just like okay, we'll play and watch how fun it is, type of year. So, and then once Tatum comes back, you never know. I mean, most of these players do recover nowadays from these type of injuries, and it's not like he's like an older player, so you would think that he's still going to come back and he's going to look like the Jason Tatum we know, but never know. I mean, so that's like the only thing, but I do think that he will make a full recovery. So if you want, we can move on. We got through that tough pill for you to swallow. Now we can get to the one for me, with, as being a Donovan Mitchell fan, the Pacers beating the Cavaliers 4-1 in the second round. And I'll let you start though first, but what did you make of this series? And then, the Pacers going back-to-back conference finals, and the Cavs, their season ending, well before I think they were hoping it would.
Man, I definitely shocked. I thought that this would be a long series that the Pacers would make tough, but I think I picked the Cavs in 7 going into the series. So I thought it'd be tough. I just think Indy, very much like the Knicks, these two teams are kind of similar. You can't count those guys out of games. I don't care if you're up 35 points. You just can't. Because those teams super scrappy. Indy basically won, 3 of their 4 games while they were trailing by a decent amount in the series. Or maybe 2 of the 4, because games 2, they were down like 19 points. Game 5, they were down like 19 points again. Like, they were down basically a dub in 2 games. And we're able to come back and win those games. Scrappy team that they play their brand of basketball. They're going to get up and down the court. It's hard to pace the pace with them. No pun intended. It's hard to pace with those guys because they play so fast. Their defense has really improved too, which I think is the big part of it. Like game 1, they didn't miss, and Cleveland stuck around, but Ty Jerome was not great in that game. Donovan Mitchell had like 35 plus points, but he wasn't amazing, and the Pacers were hitting every shot. So that's just kind of the game that the road team is designed to steal, and they steal home court. Game 2 was a little different. Ty Jerome played awful. Donovan Mitchell was incredible, but you can kind of tell like he was kind of gassed by the end. I think just not having Darius Garland, even though he was not great when he came back, it's just good to have somebody that's a respected playmaker and creator alongside you, because it takes a lot of energy to do what Donovan Mitchell did in game 2. I think he was kind of paying for it like the rest of the series. Honestly, he just kind of looked gassed a little bit after that game. And obviously, Indy really stole game 2 with like the offensive rebound off the free throw miss, Halliburton game-winning shot. And that's kind of the point where you kind of felt the same way in the Celtics series. Like, it's going to be tough to overcome losing 2 games at home the way that you lost them, especially that game 2, which was really demoralizing for the Cavs because they had that game. They were up 7 with like 48 seconds left. And even when Mobley, Hunter, Garland all came back, I still wasn't really that confident. And the team looked so defeated in game 4, which that's really what shocked me the most, is it seemed like they just kind of laid down and just kind of gave up. And that really shocked me. I was like, I did not expect this Cavs team to just kind of die on the court like that. Like, I thought that they would at least show some fight. Even game 5, I feel like it was kind of the same thing. It's so crazy. Like, it's kind of unbelievable, but I missed like the first like half of the game. My dad texted me. He's like, I just see the Pacers coming back and winning this game. I'm like, and I checked the score. I'm like, well, they're down like 12 points right now. And then slowly but surely, like they just started walking them down. And then you could just see by the end of the game, Donovan Mitchell, even though he was a little hurt, but gas, Garland not playing as well. Like they just didn't have it in this series. Maybe it was just matchup based. Maybe the injuries early on were too much to overcome. But it just seemed like it was, once again, a team that really wanted it, and then a team that kind of gave up a little bit. Like how Boston fought in game 5 against the Knicks, I kind of thought the Cavs would do the same thing at home. Like they would really just go down and try and win that game by 30 points, just give themselves a shot in game 6. Didn't see that. I think this is a team that, as like NBA Twitter as it sounds, they need more dogs in that team, bro. Like I feel like they're lacking like the toughness that a real championship team has. And this offseason, I would expect them to definitely be like in the market to make some big time shake up to that roster, because when you have a season like they just had, especially with how it's the one team that everybody thought would be tough for them to beat got eliminated, it has to just like be eating at them still right now. Like, damn, we could have had the opportunity to get to the NBA Finals. And instead, we lost in 5 to a really good Pacers team, but a team that we're more talented than. Even with the injuries, I thought that they would have been able to overcome it, honestly.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, just with that, like you talked about, like how they need to add more dogs onto the team too. It also probably is a little demoralizing when the guy who I guess like sent the big text message, Max Struz, and he's like, yeah, like only get on here like if you're gonna show up and stuff, if you're committed, and then he goes 0 for 9, no points in that last game. I think that's a little demoralizing, and because of that too, like that is why they need more people like that, because it can't just be like, all right, like here's a guy who's been to the finals multiple times, and he's the one kind of like being our real leader, and when he doesn't show up, then it's gonna feel really deflating for us to keep it going. I think maybe that played a part, but I'm not blaming like that as the most thing. It just felt like they didn't really care. I would make an argument that the Cavs, took the Pacers way less seriously than every other team this year. Like I wouldn't even just stop at the playoffs, because I don't know if you remember, but they lost to them in the regular season after a 12-game winning streak, and the Pacers ended their 12-game winning streak. You know, I know that you win a lot of games, you sometimes lose sight of it, like during the season and stuff, but you know, that's a team that made the conference finals last year too, and was probably one of the tougher teams they played over that stretch. They lost that game. I think they beat them in the regular season the next time, and then they played 2 games at the end of the year. I know one of them was the very last game. You're going to rest guys, doesn't mean a thing, but they also played a game like a week before that, and everyone's out. Why is everyone sitting out a game a week before the end of the year? Like,
and the 1 seed was still up for grabs at that point too, which is
yeah. And the Pacers were sitting in the like 4 or 5 matchups, so it's like this is a team that you're more than likely gonna have a good chance of playing in that second round. I mean, unless they believe that much in like the Bucks, but I didn't. Like, even if Dame was playing at that point, because we already knew he was dealing with the stuff in his calf. So I don't know. I think with that, like, and then I think game 2 was also a bad example of it, or a good example of it, like a bad representation of showing that effort. I'm not going to say guys should go out there and play hurt, but it didn't even seem like they tried or they cared to play. And that's so deflating for a lot of those guys who are playing, when it's like, you know, you're going to be without these guys. And that was the turning point in this series. Because I think once they got down 2-0, it was just going to be so hard, especially with the Pacers, the way they play. It's like, yeah, they can be streaky. They could hit like every shot, and they can also miss every shot. But the way they had been playing, the confidence they had built after that game, you almost kind of knew it wasn't going to happen. You know, once the Cavs got game 3 the way they did, you're like, maybe, but I still would probably think the Pacers win game 4. I would think game 4 is going to be a close game, though, and then they just completely blew them out in game 4. And from that point, you knew they weren't going to come back in the series. And I actually do, like, your dad made a good point, because I actually did think the same thing as I was watching the game. Like, they were up to like 20 points or something like that. And then once it got down to 10, and you start hearing the commentary, like, here comes Indiana and stuff. And it's like, you know that they're about to go on one of those runs. I think also, too, when you lose so many games at home against the same team in the playoffs, like, it almost gives you a bad vibe of your own arena at that moment. And they had the vibe of, okay, we blew it in game 2, because they had a big lead the very last game they played in Cleveland. They had a big lead and blew it. And the same thing transpired in game 5. You know, Donovan Mitchell didn't really shoot well from 3 in this series, but I do think he was still, like, by far the best player in this series. And it's a shame because, you know, there's been times where, yeah, you can put some blame on him too, but it just feels like this one's really hard to put on him, just because there's a lot of other guys that either didn't show up or just didn't play in key games that they should have, and guys that just really didn't play well. You know, I don't know. Just felt like they could have used Darius Garland a little bit more in this series, maybe a healthier Darius Garland. But, I mean, granted, this is the 3rd year in a row now where we've said something about Darius Garland in the playoffs, so that's a problem. Jared Allen, never going to beat the allegations of saying the lights are too bright in the playoffs, so I think that just came up again. And then, yeah, like, it's just the same thing. I don't know how, like, remember that meme where Donovan Mitchell said it's the same thing? It's literally the same thing. Like, this is the same thing, because he's on one of the best teams in the conference, gets to the second round, and his team goes from the best three-point shooting team in the season to one of the worst in the playoffs. And he's part of that as well, but it's just amazing how it happens from a whole team perspective. Like, I don't know. It's just tough. I mean, the Pacers, yes, they were hitting remarkable shots, but I also do think they wanted it more. You could just tell, like, the way that even the role players were playing. Like, the other guys, as, you know, some people say, like, can win or lose a series, can make or break a series, and it really showed in this one, because guys like Aaron Nesmith or TJ McConnell or Miles Turner's kind of like a better other guy. He's not really like another guy, but you know what I mean? Like, the guys who aren't, like, getting the ball in their hands, like, most of the time, like, they really shine for the Pacers, and they really did not for the Cavs. So Yeah, I mean, I don't know really what else to say. I think that they definitely need more like dogs on their team though, because I mean, I don't think there's more than like 2 or 3 on their team maybe, and one of them is probably Tristan Thompson, who doesn't do anything on the basketball court. Like he doesn't count. Like he's not even out there. So yeah.
Yeah, like they just kind of lack that a lot. They have a lot of like really skillful players, but you can just tell like Indy just has guys that just like you said, they just want that like more. They just want it way more than what Cleveland did. And like even like Ty Jerome went from $80 million to probably like
$8
this season. Like he was terrible, and I was already kind of like, I think Ty Jerome's a good player, but I was kind of already thinking like, I don't think he's going to be that good of a playoff player when the competition gets up, just because kind of like Pat Bev was saying, guy got slow feet. He's like a good like regular season backup point guard, I would say. And they had a lot of stock invested on him playing well, I would think. So, like you said, Indy's a team that was in the conference finals last year, and Brad Stevens actually said something yesterday when he was just asked about like how series can like just swing like with a few plays and stuff. Indiana could have been up 3-1 on Boston last year. Like they had game 1, they coughed it away. Game 2 was pretty tight, and games 3 and 4 in Indy, they had both of those games. They were up in the fourth quarter by, like 3 possessions multiple times in those games, and they were unable to close them. Like it's just a team that has been there. They played the eventual champs really tough last year, and they just beat a Bucks team that maybe a lot of people, or at least maybe half the population, thought Milwaukee had a pretty good chance of winning that series. So, like you said, they might have taken Indy lightly. It's not a team that you can take lightly. The Knicks aren't going to take Indiana lightly at all because they just matched up last year. And, I'm glad Indiana was able to kind of punch Cleveland in the mouth a little bit, because at this point, maybe Indiana just doesn't seem like a team that belongs in these conference finals, but they've been there 2 years in a row now. They're a team that belongs there. They deserve to be there, even if you feel like they don't have like a top 10 player in the league. They got a lot of really damn good players on that team. Like a lot of guys that are probably closer to top 30, like, Tyrese Halliburton. He can elevate his game to be one of the best point guards in the league. Pascal Siakam had a really good series. He's had a really good playoff run. He's a champion. He's been there. He's, accomplished that feat before. Miles Turner, I feel like he is also one of those guys that elevates his game in the playoffs. And like you said, they're role players. They just do their jobs. They go in. Even a guy like Thomas Bryant, I feel like, was just going in and playing like tougher than what Cleveland was putting out on the court. Like he would just have like a quick like 3-minute spurt where he's just making like the right plays. He's making a couple shots here and there. He's rebounding. Like that's all you can ask for. A team that's going to play like 10 plus guys, but all those guys are going to come in. They're going to do their job. Like Ben Shepherd comes in, he does his job. He's going to defend. He might hit a jump shot. Like they just have a team that they know what their roles are. They're going to come in. They're going to execute. They might have cold shooting nights, but they're just a team that you still can't count out because they can get hot. And in those close games, it just seems like Tyrese Halliburton is one of those guys that kind of elevates a little bit too. So, they're a dangerous team, a team that can definitely find their way in the NBA Finals after the conference finals are done.
And they have veterans too. I mean, Siakam, NBA champion, Turner, like he's been in the playoffs for how many years now? He's been like, and then James Johnson even, like he has a ton of experience. TJ McConnell too. So it's like, it's not like it's just like a totally young team or anything like that. You mentioned too, like Ty Jerome and like his struggles and stuff. Like it makes you think about that Virginia team that was the 1 seed and lost to the 16 seed. First time that ever happened in March Madness. And it's like, are these players that you want to invest in come a playoff time? Like these are the questions like now the Cavs have to really ask themselves. And me personally, like I know a lot of people are making trade rumors, especially for Garland and Allen. They're pretty much saying don't trade Mitchell and don't trade Mobley. Although I think Mobley needs to get a little bit more effective around the rim. But the point is, like, those are the two they're saying should be untouchable. But you're looking at your Celtics next year, who are probably, if everyone's healthy, maybe the biggest threat to a Cavs chance at going to the finals, like, or something like that. And, Tatum's probably not going to be there. So it's like, do you really want to break up this team when you have probably a good enough team to get there? But then you're also going to be considering like what people are saying about you can't play 2 guards and stuff like that, like 2 smaller guards. Yeah. Like you got to get rid of one of them. So it's going to be interesting. But I mean, I guess, shout out to the Pacers. I think that, they definitely, like you said, played a little better. And it's a lot of people have been hating on them, just because, and even to a degree, myself included. But like you said, they've been to the conference finals back-to-back years. I think they're probably the only team that there's been, strong enough evidence for showing that the in-season tournament actually helped them with some experience. Because I think once they got to there, like, that only transpired later in that season, and it's transpired this season too. And who knows, like, where they'll go. But, I mean, I think that the door for them to get to the finals this year is more open than it was last year. And it's like, no duh, because they got swept last year. So it's like it can only get better. But I think just the team that they're playing, no disrespect to the Knicks, but I don't think it competes with your Celtics last year. And I think this is a better Pacers team, too, that has more, time around each other. Last year they made the trade midseason for Siakam, and it took some time to gel. This season they've had a full year behind each other. And you look at the Western Conference side, those are two teams that have never been to the finals either, like, with those cores. So, I guess technically, yeah, like, because only the Thunder have been there like once, but it was a long time ago.
Also, Rick Carlisle's the only coach out of these four that has been there and has won, the whole thing. So, that's why, like you're saying, like, their window, it's not now. Like, they're probably still going to be a good team next year, but to make the finals and potentially have just a chance to win it, like, it's now. Yeah. Like, this is your opportunity. Boston's out. Knicks are a great team, but they beat them last year. They're a different team now for sure. But they're going to go in there with the confidence, like, oh, hell, we made those guys make a bunch of trades this offseason. Like, we helped make what this team is now. Like, we know that we can beat them. So it's gonna be a fun conference final. I'm actually really excited for the Eastern Conference side of things, even though we were all expecting Cavs Celtics, which fortunately we didn't get there. But I think this is not a bad, second matchup that we got. I think this is going to be a fun series.
And I think for Rick Carlisle, like you said, it's probably, like, against the Knicks, like with Tibbs and stuff, this is probably the toughest coaching challenge in a playoff atmosphere that he's going to see. It's not that those other guys can't coach in the West, but they've just never been this far. And then you look at Kenny Atkinson, like, he's pretty sure he's never been past the first round as a head coach until now. So, I mean, that was a little unfamiliar territory. I know he won as an assistant, but it's still a little unfamiliar territory where you're the guy calling most of the shots. And then Doc Rivers is Doc Rivers. So there's nothing else to say there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun though. Quick tidbit about Cleveland though. It might be tough to really improve the roster because ideally, what would you want to get for Darius Garland? Like, is that going to be out there? That's the big question. If you want to trade a Jared Allen, like, can you really upgrade that much? So I understand your point there. But I think also, even though the East might look wide open next year with Boston potentially not having Tatum for the majority of or all next season, you still might have to make tough decisions either way because you just might have to look at your team and be like, even if we make it all the way to the finals, like, is this team really good enough to get the job done, to really, like, close the door and win it all? That's a question you got to ask. I feel like we really saw, like, with Boston going into their championship season, Brad Stevens had to make some tough decisions. Like, he was there when they drafted Marcus Smart, and he's like, I love him, but we can get better. And if you can get better, sometimes you got to make the tough calls, tough decisions, just for the betterment of your championship window, especially if it might be a more open race next season with Boston potentially just not being one of the horses there. So it's going to be an interesting offseason for a lot of teams that fell a little bit short this year.
And I wouldn't even say it would be open. I just think that the fact that Boston was probably going to be their biggest, like, kryptonite in the sense of, like, well, we've never shown that we could beat them in the playoffs, even though, like, you could look at a few things like, oh, we were hurt last year and we played pretty well. Like, maybe it's a longer series. Like, I'm talking about, like, when they got eliminated by Boston last year. But, these other teams that are around right now, like, I think that the Cavs probably feel like if they're playing their best brand of basketball, they could beat any of these teams. So that's kind of like, I guess, like, what I'm saying is, like, you don't necessarily want to move people if you're not going to get something better. Like, you don't want to take a risk on something and then it's like I think the good example is the Bucks because they took a risk trading Chris Middleton for Kyle Kuzma, and Kyle Kuzma dropped zeros all across the stat line for like half the games, and Chris Middleton's sitting at home on his couch when we know every time in the playoffs he rises to the occasion. So he would have at least given you more than that, so yeah.
I think that's the one like difference though is like when it comes to Garland, when it comes to Allen, these are guys that maybe don't rise as much to the occasion as other guys do. And I love Darius Garland. When he made his first All-Star game, I was one of the drivers of that bus. I was pushing every single day for Darius Garland to make the All-Star game. Like he's my guy. I have questions on if with this team he can elevate his play to where he would need to for them to really be a championship team. And I like Jared Allen too. I kind of have the same questions. Ever since he said the lights were too bright, that kind of turned me off a little bit about him as a player. Because I'm like, just as a competitor, you don't really want to admit that. And it just kind of seemed like I'm happy that we made it. Like, we haven't made it without LeBron since whatever year. Like, I'm just happy that we got here. So that's my only thing about really those two guys in particular. I would say Mobley, Mitchell, those are the guys that you definitely keep, you want to build with. Everybody else, you see if you can maybe improve a little bit. But we'll see. I mean, it's going to be a long summer that who knows, even with, like, the new CBA, like, that's the biggest takeaway I've had from, like, end-of-season press conferences from GMs is, like, who knows? Like, there might be fireworks or there might not be because it might be hard to really make a lot of, like, quality moves that make sense for both sides to want to get done. Like, it's going to be a weird offseason. That's kind of the vibe I've been getting from listening to the GM. So hopefully teams are able to still find ways to improve, but it's going to be tough to do so, I would say.
Heck yeah. Highlighted by Adam Silver rigging the draft lottery for the Mavericks, but that's another topic. You talked about
man, like that was ridiculous.
That was wild. And then the Spurs game too. But anyways, we can, you talked about elevating your play, and I know that's something that you often do when these mini games come about. So why don't we get right to it? I call it the round robin Rose's mini game. So I did this with your guy, Devin, also known as Run the NBA, just 2 weeks ago now, because last episode, each round's about 2 weeks. But how it's going to work, his was more round one based. And for him, I basically had Derrick Rose's highest ever point per game average in a first round series. And then I gave him all the losing teams' leading scorers. And I said that they average more or less than D Rose, essentially, at his highest. Now, for your case, I am going to, just to make it a little bit more interesting, because D Rose has his peak second round playoff scoring average is like 29.8 points a game. Pretty insane, right?
Against like 28. That was going to be my guess.
Yeah. It was in that series against the Hawks, my mortal enemy. Yeah, my mortal enemy. Yep. But I'm going to flip it up a little bit. I'm going to make it his average for the second round in his career, which is still only a couple series, but his average for the second round in his career is 25.8 points a game. 25.8. So now you know that number. So I'm basically going to rattle through 8 players. Now, in this case, just to keep 8 questions just like last time, I did pick one player on every team. So I even picked the winning teams and the losing teams in this respect. But it's going to be the leading scorer on every team. And you're basically going to tell me if each player is higher or lower in points per game for the second round than Derrick Rose's 25.8 second round average. Okay. So are you ready?
He only played in the second round twice, right?
Yes, 2011 and 2015. Both times averaged over 21 points a game. So
he was good in that Cavs series. He was good. Game winner aside, he was pretty good.
Hey man, people got to put respect on my playoff riser, GOAT, D Rose. But with that being said, are you ready?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right, so we're going to start off. Again, the number is 25.8 for D Rose. And I'm going to just give you the player. You got to tell me if it's higher or lower. First player is starting off with is Anthony Edwards. Was he higher or lower than that for his average in the second round.
So was his average higher than Derrick Rose's?
Correct.
Okay, it's probably close. I'm gonna go lower. I feel like he had a couple low scoring games.
So you want to roll with lower for? So are you saying though Ant is or?
I'm gonna go Anthony Edwards is lower. He might be like right on the cusp, but I'm gonna go lower.
Okay, so you're going Anthony Edwards lower?
Yep.
Okay. It is not lower. It was very close though. It was 26.2.
Okay.
It was literally like, I think if Anthony Edwards scored 2 less points in one of the games, he would have been lower. So or actually, I think it would have been tied maybe, or I don't know, something like that. But it's that close, 2 total points really. So it's okay. You still got 7 more to get some pointage here. Now the second one here, Jonathan Kuminga for the Warriors was the leading scorer. Higher or lower?
I'm gonna go lower. He had a couple big games, but there's no way he was averaging 26 a game. There's no fucking
way. And that is correct. It is lower. It was 20.8, which is still decent, but
good series for him, for somebody that was a DNP for like 6 games in the first round.
Yeah, and most of the way near the end of the year too. So
yeah.
So all right. So the third one we got here is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Higher or lower?
7 games. He had like 4 30 pieces. I'm gonna go higher. I feel like he had a pretty good series.
And you are correct. It is 29.7.
Okay. Balled out.
Not bad. So number 4, Nikola Jokic. Higher or lower?
He had a 40-piece, but he had some stinkers too, man.
This is true. 25.8 is the D-Rose number.
I feel like he's slightly higher though, because he's still scoring like 22 in a few of those, but he had a really bad game too. I'm gonna go higher. He's probably a little higher.
And you are correct. It is higher. Yep. He was actually noticeably higher. I'd say 28.4.
Higher than I thought. Okay, that's not bad for the stinkers that he put up. So okay.
Actually, aside from the last game, I think he was leading. He had more points per game than Shai in the series, actually. So it probably didn't feel like it though. But okay, so you're 3 for 4. We got 4 more left. Jalen Brunson, higher or lower?
I'm gonna go lower. He had some non-Jalen Brunson type games, like some 7 for 23 games. So I'm gonna go lower.
Okay, so you're gonna go lower?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It is incorrect. It is higher. And the crazy thing is, it's the same scoring average as Anthony Edwards, 26.2.
Jeez, okay.
They were the exact same. Rounding wise, I think to the specific like hundreds or something, they'd have to be different because one of them played 5 games, the other played 6. But
okay.
Yeah. So didn't get that one. But can you bounce back with your Celtics and Jaylen Brown?
Oh, he was definitely lower.
And that is correct. Yep. Didn't even have to think about it. Okay. Yeah, I feel like that was pretty easy. We got 2 more left. Number 7, Pascal Siakam, higher or lower?
I feel like he was around like 24. I'm gonna go lower. He had a good series though. He was efficient.
You are correct that he is lower. It was way lower than that though. Actually, it was 17.8.
Jeez, I feel like he was balling a little more than that. Dang.
They had a lot of guys that were up there. You know, like I think they had 4 guys averaging over 15 a game. So
that'll do it. Okay.
Yeah, it was tough. Okay, and then we got the last one here. Donovan Mitchell, higher or lower?
He's higher. He was averaging like 40 through the first 3 games. And
you are correct. It is higher. He had the highest scoring average in the second round, 34.2.
So that's even like he didn't shoot well in game 5. He exited early in game 4.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah. So that was That was tough. So you did get still 6 of 8. I mean, how do you feel about that though?
It's not bad. I mean, a lot of it was kind of just trying to remember like who's hooping or not. Yeah, I mean, shout out to Jonathan Kuminga for averaging 21 points a game in the second round. That's pretty good, man. He might get paid off of that.
Now, here I'll give you a chance though I'll give you the 2 points that you missed if you can get these 2 correct. If you want to go for a second chance here.
Okay, let's do it.
And it's going to be based around Ant and Jalen Brunson. So those are the 2 you missed. So I told you Derrick Rose's highest scoring average in the second round was 29.8, correct? I'm basically going to ask you if Anthony Edwards and Jalen Brunson's career high in the second round is above or below that. So what do you think of those two? The highest second round point per game average. It could be this year.
I think Ant's below it, and I think Brunson is he averaging 30 over 7 games?
Now Brunson's been in the second round technically 4 times because if you count that Mavericks year, but he's been in there 3 times with the Knicks. Ant, this is the second year.
That Heat series, that was like his low-key breakout party. I'm gonna go Brunson was higher. He might have been like 29.9 or something like that.
So you're going?
But I'm going Ant lower.
Brunson higher, Ant lower?
Yeah.
Okay. So Ant was 27.7, so you were correct there. And Brunson was 31, right on the dot. So you got both of those. All right.
Was it 31? Was that?
It was the Heat
last
series.
Season?
The Heat series, yeah. You're right. I think last year he was 29.7, which would have been a 10th below D Rose. But yeah, nonetheless though, so I'll give you the credit for those since you got those 2 back there. So how about that? 8 points, 8 questions. How do you feel now?
8 out of 10, dang near, but pretty good, pretty good. Good to know. I do remember that Derrick Rose series though. Like he, outside of like the 45-point game he had or whatever.
Yeah, 44 against the Hawks.
Yeah, even outside of that, he had a series. Even in the first round series, he was great too against Indy. Shout out to D Rose, man. Shout out to D Rose.
Yes, sir. You might, your personal feelings, you might not count it as 8 for 8, but I'm gonna still count it on the show. But you know what? It always leaves room for improvement on the next one. And, we'll have to see how it goes. Devin himself, he got 8 points too. So both you guys got 8 points. I think we know who might be next on the show. And if he can get 8 points as well, then what do you know?
Perfect, man.
So, but anyways, appreciate you for joining me on the episode. I think it was a pretty good one. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Thank you guys for watching. You got anything you want to add before we wrap it up?
Just excited for the conference finals, man. Should I give a prediction real quick?
Go ahead. Yeah.
I'll probably go OKC in 6, and I really want to pick Indiana, but I'm gonna go Knicks in 7. That's gonna be a scrappy series.
I'm gonna also go Thunder Knicks because nothing I've said has come true lately.
Same.
So let's do it. Let's go all orange for the finals. We need it.
Let's go.
Yeah, we need it. And crying for help. But anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed. Thank you guys for watching, and we're out. Peace.